Today I'm going to have a quick overview of the AIM quote process. The quoting process is a set of 3 tabs here within the costing module. So if I open up the costing module, I will see the 3 tabs: the quoting process, quoting reports, and quoting file maintenance. Looking at it very briefly, in the quoting process, we basically have the ability to set up items for quote and put them within a quote package, quote form, quote maintenance. In order to start with this process, typically you would start from an existing production or quoted part so as to create the skeleton of your quoted item. So we have a quote copy item utility, and when I open up that, you'll basically see that I can copy a production item to a quoted item, or copy from a quoted item to another quoted item. And then lastly, if a quote were approved, this is also where we'd allow you to copy a quoted item back into the production environment. The nice part about the quoted process is although all the costing is coming from the actual work centers and labor tables of the regular AIM production side, these item numbers that are getting quoted don't show up and do not interfere with all your regular AIM production item numbers. So to do an example today, I'm going to pick an item number and I'm going to copy it from production to a quoted item, and I'll call this quoted example item number, right? And I'll just say it's a quoted example as my description. And I am going to copy the part routing and bill of materials. So that just gives them all my information there. And I will copy the cost fields as well. And here I'll go ahead and process. It asks me, do I want to confirm my copy request? And I'm going to say yes. So it asks me now to run the quote cost roll-up for the item quoted example. So, and there it tells me it's complete. If I want to run the cost roll-up, I can do it here with this button. I can also run cost roll-ups, quote cost roll-ups here. It's very similar to the production quote cost roll-up. It's completely contained, or production cost roll-up. It's completely contained within quote cost roll-up. Here I will just take the quoted part, my quoted example, and I will roll it up. There we go, like that. So now I have a quoted cost roll-up. I can then look at an item cost in a item cost roll-up, quoted item cost report. I'll look at the standard cost. In this example, I only have this one example, but here I can see I've got my, this might be a little bit outside my realm of possibility in my recording. So here I see my material, my outside costs, my labor cost, my burden, my incremental cost, and essentially my part has 15 cents of labor, 85 cents of burden, and 50 cents of material for $1.50, really simply put. So again, now I have a cost roll-up fully within the quoting module in AIM. Once I have items created, a collection of items create a quote. So I can come into this quote maintenance entry, and in quote maintenance entry is where I'll create a quote or a package of items in a quote. So I'll add a new quote, start it today. It's going to be quoted by my engineer number 1, and again I can set up different estimators, so I could have John, Bob, and Sally all from the engineering team here. Quoting engineer 1 is the person who set it up. Who's this going to? It's going to a buyer, John Smith at Customer X. And again, I can have all the different buyers that I sell to here as well. This John Smith is currently associated to my customer ID Meritor. And if I had a contact information for there, it could be listed in this field here. Typically, these requests for quotes come in, and we might have an RFQ from Meritor, RFQ Meritor 123, and again, that's just for a reference point. We can also put a deletion date of this quote, perhaps in, 2025, just so that it deletes after 6 months or after a year, or after 6 years, or whatever the case might be. So this will get my quote package started. It's kind of like a header record for my quote package. And it's telling me it already exists, so here it is right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the detail of this quote. And on the detail of this quote is where I'll add in the individual item numbers. Now I only have one item number here, and it's this quoted example item number. It's then asking me for the status of this quote, and these statuses are something you can set up on your own. So I just have approved quotes, delivered quotes, or brand new quotes. So I'll choose brand new quotes. It asks me for a quoting profile. Quoting profile is where we add the margin to the quote. And this can be set up and you can have different quoting profiles. So let me talk about that. We already had the cost of this part, which was $1.50. Again, 50 cents material, 15 cents labor, and 85% overhead. In our quoting file maintenance, we have quote profiles. And a quote profile is where you define your margin rates. So I will create a quote profile, again called example, and I'll just type out the description as example. And I'll say I'm going to put, I don't know, a 15% markup on material, a 50% markup on labor, and I will put a 20% markup on my fixed and I'll do it on my variable overhead. So again, this is telling me that I basically got a 15% markup on material, 50 on labor, and 20% on variable and fixed overhead. I will not add a batch charge per lot, which could be associated to every part. I'm not going to add just an overriding 30% more, but I could do that as well as kind of some final price conversion. So what this does is it defines how you're going to mark up your costs. So I will hit OK on this example. Cannot be 0, so I'm going to make it 1. There we go. So I'll hit OK on this. Now I have an example quote profile. So now I'm back in my quote. I'm on my quoted example item number, and I will choose this example quote profile. Then asks me what will the customer call the part, and the customer in my example will call the customer part 1, 2, 3, and this will be Rev A, FOB, estimated units. I don't know, put 500,000 units, lead time, I don't know, 2 weeks, etc. Minimum order quantity, I don't know, 100,000, right? And if I say update unit price, what it's going to do is it's going to take my unit cost, it's going to multiply it by the quote profile, and it's going to give me a suggested unit price. So given my quote profile and my cost of $1.50, it's suggesting a unit price of $1.70 to fit that quote profile. However, I'm free to either accept that unit price of $1.70 here, or this is free form. So I might say, no, I'm going to mark it up another 15 cents. I do all that, I hit OK. And then it asks me, do I have another item number that I want to add in this quote package? It's important to know that I can have many different item numbers in a single quote. I can have many different quotes with the same collection of item numbers, right? You have quote package 1, which is under a certain profit profile, quote profile, and the same quote package under a different profit profile. So again, you can do those tricks. We also have notes in our quotes. So you can put a note within a given item number or at the header level. So again, at the header level, we also have some notes. We can attach documents to the quote. So if you have the part print or the RFQ document and you want to attach a hyperlink to those documents, you can keep those all together as part of the quote package. And again, you could attach them to one quote, you could attach them to multiple quotes. You then have an ability to look up all the quotes on hand and who they're from. We have reports from the quote module that show exactly where you're at with your quote status. Which quotes do you want to show? Do you want to show it by the quoting estimator? Do you want to show it by the customer ID? Do you want to show it by the date that it was quoted? Of course, we can build any custom report you want to quote them to report them in any other fields that you want. We also have the cost approval sheet. This cost approval sheet, quote cost and approval sheet, is there to be printed out if you have an estimator creating the quote and you want to hand that report off to a manager or something to approve the quote. You select the quote number and all the lines or whatever subset you want and run the report. Here we have a breakdown of my $1.70. So the material was 50 cents. My conversion, let me see if I can make this a little bit easier to read. My material was 50 cents. My conversion is 15% profit. So it's 57.5 cents. Labor 15 cents, 50% profit. So so 22.5. Variable overhead 25 cents, fixed overhead 50 cents, both at 20% markup. Again, cost of $1.50 and a markup of 20 cents, $1.70, and this is a form that could be printed out and approved. Also in the quoting process, again, we move the quotes through the different stages and steps. So this quote right now and its individual details are going through a step of new. You can mark up those statuses as we move through the different phases. We also have tracking. Oh, I don't have it engaged, so let me go ahead and get that started. We have the ability to do quote tracking. So if I go into the quoting module, which is where all our parameters are, I'm going to go turn on tracking in use, and I'll say yes. Right? And if I have quote tracking in use, and I reopen my quote, so if I go to quote tracking, and if I do my quote maintenance utility, this allows me to put a little bit of a timeline, toll gates of the different quotes. So if I go to my detail on this item number, and the tracking is illuminated. So I can set up different events, completion dates, and process checklists, and I can build these timelines. Again, these will be generic for all line items on a quote, but it allows me to put yes and no items that have to happen and whether they've happened, and also completion dates. Again, this is all within AIM, so everyone's going to the same location to get their data. I've seen many companies organize this data in Excel sheets, which is great, but then sometimes the latest Excel sheet is not updated in the right location and confusing information might happen. So again, this completion dates, this would be date labels for major toll gates of a quote and where it got to. And then again, the process checklist, was the quote received, was the print received, has the print been added as an attachment to the quote? Those kinds of yes-no things could be managed with the process checklists. Might also help run your PPAP meeting or your quoting meeting or your budgeting or estimating meeting. Again, you can still have the quotes active even when you're working on PPAPing a part. The final stage of quoting obviously is winning 100% of your business, which is I'm sure what everyone's doing. They're winning 100% of every quotes. But the big thing there is once you win a quote, you can go back to the item copy utility. And again, when you want to throw a item back over the wall from the quoted side of AIM back into the production side of AIM, you just copy from a quoted item back to a production item. So from quoted item, in this case now I have my quoted example, and now I have my new business part right here that I could make. Same option to go ahead and copy it, and this will put it on the production side of AIM. You'll notice that my quoted example is not part of regular AIM right now. So if I go into inventory and go to my item master, even though it looks like an item master and it operates like an item master, my quoted part number here, quoted example, is not in my regular production parts. It's really good. You're keeping it outside of what the typical AIM materials managers and production people are using. You don't see it on the production side, that quoted part that I have. However, you can access it and update it just like a part. So quote item maintenance utility is here. You can maintain it here. You can do your quote item master and part routing. Again, here's my quoted item master. I just showed you my production item master, but my quoted item master here now has these two parts, the component and the quoted example. So this is on the quote side. I also have the ability to create my routings. Down here too, my quote part routing. I have just one step on my quote part routing, which is the step 10. And when I have a bill of materials, and this all got copied over from the production environment when I did my copy, but I can update and modify my routing, my bill of materials, just like I would do in standard AIM. But again, I'm doing it on the quoting side, which is not showing on the other side. So a quick overview, 15 minutes here of the quoting module. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to ask.